thank you all for coming today. It's a great time to talk about dual enrollment and workforce readiness and apprenticeship programs, especially the way that the world just is changing and moving at such a rapid pace that, we know that it's hard to keep skills up. And so we thank you all. I thank you all for joining on today. My name is Dr. Subrin Coleman, and I wear a lot of different hats. One of which I wear is our Director of Workforce Readiness and Community Engagement for the UNLV College of Education. In addition, so that gives me the opportunity to do some really fun things, more especially like overseeing our youth college and career readiness office, and great times there too. So what we do there, we get a chance to work with lots of community partners, lots of students, and give students the opportunity to enroll in dual enrollment or take concurrent courses and earn college credit, while they also get the opportunity to participate in different types of apprenticeships. And so we'll talk about that later on throughout the presentation. Another area too that I get a chance to do is I get a chance to also to teach. So I also teach here in the College of Education, as well as at Nevada State University in their comm department. And that gives me a really good opportunity to stay connected with what's going on and really see what's happening, real time within this academic space, and figuring out ways in which we can always take theory and turn into practice. And then I'm, always engaged in the community. I work with Opportunity 180 and have a chance to be the board chair there. And so we work with funding, more especially like schools that, that have missions where they believe in, like educating, our kids. And so there's a lot of charter schools and new schools that are, that are being funded. And so I say all that to say that kind of gives me a well-rounded breadth of just different types of information, experience, when we start looking at our young people and looking at college and some of the opportunities, that they have and that they don't have. And so before we even get started, I want to know just a little bit about you. And so if you can use your text, the box as well too, I'd like to ask you a question, and I want you to think of yourself as your younger person when you were 12 years old, or if you don't remember that far back, maybe whenever you were like your first year of high school, but anytime between that 12 to that 14 age range. And I want to know with you, like what jobs that existed. If you could think about like the top 2 or top 1 popular job, what did existed? And feel free to add these into the box as well. Doctor, teacher, doctor and a lawyer, nurse, doctor, vet, lawyer. Yes, those are that too. And so a lot of our students, and look here, keep coming in. Yeah, something with computers. That's very similar to I think most of all the ways that we learn. That we knew too. When I was doing my master's here, I had like my capstone looked at the strengths and challenges of recruiting students in Clark County, and one of the things that I had done with about 600 students is to ask them if they what they thought like was a successful job, or what did they want to be. And overwhelmingly it was like a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher. Some people said medical, but I knew what they meant in that space, or something that was like first responder, maybe a police officer, or maybe like a fireman. But that's really all that sometimes we know that exists. And so now if you take that step further, when you ask yourself like what, casino employees, yes, absolutely, especially growing up here in Vegas, what felt realistic or possible. So, even when young people are aware of the professions, think back to your time as well too. Anything that was shaped maybe by your class or by your race, by your geography, your exposure, what part of the country that you may have lived in, what you knew about, what maybe felt realistic. When we think about like a lot of folks too, if you think about, a lot of our students now, the limited exposure that they get, they only get to see, 3 different types of careers in a lot of spaces. Robert Putnam talks about this in his book, Our Kids. And he says that, basically when we looked at it, that it is, our students know a janitor, they know a teacher, and then they know a police officer. Those are people who they see like most often. And so in terms, if you don't see in a couple of those that you fit into, then you're almost like left to, not sure exactly like what actually like exists. And then if you can think back to what you do now, and I want everybody to be honest with yourself, how many of you thought the profession that you're in now was even an option, even knew about this, that like a job like this even existed? Right. Most people say that they did not know, or this was not something. Um, some people a little great for those ones. Yes, didn't even know it was a career. That's mine too. When I was going to college, I was going to college really to be an engineer, and because I like math. And the person, my uncle had the biggest house that I had. We had seen growing up, living in Arlington, Texas, and so he was an engineer. My aunt was an architect. And then from there, that's just kind of how, my dad was like, oh, you should major in engineering. It wasn't until I took a trip and I met this gentleman who was who talked about, his career and things that he had done, and was very inspiring as a speaker. And so I approached him afterwards and asked him, what his career was. He was signing autographs, and he told me that he was a public relations practitioner. I said, so what do you do with it? Like, how do you tell somebody at college that's what you want to major in? And he said, well, you major in public relations. So I did that. I called college, and I just completely changed that. By the time I graduated, I wanted nothing to do with PR. But I got a really unique opportunity, not by design, but by chance, really, to become an academic advisor right out of school. And that kind of kickstarted a lot of my educational career. That opened a lot of the doors, but it wasn't anything that I did. It just so happened to be by chance. And I would say for most of you all too, that's pretty much how you kind of got to your space, like also. So yes, that's what we think about. What jobs that existed, what felt realistic, and what felt possible, and that that your profession was even an option. So what we like to do whenever we think about this with our students, and as we're thinking about like building programs, is that we know that exposure shapes aspiration. Proximity drives awareness. And sometimes we can't be what we can't see. We know that career awareness is shaped by students who know like where to go. They know like what to do. A lot of times without that structure exposure, many high potential students never encounter fields that even match their talents. We think a lot about this in some of our rural towns as well too. And what we've been able to discover is that, for as many of the programs that we can put places that, if people don't even know this exists or have never seen this in even of our smaller counties, then we know that there's some different things that we should be doing, or we need to rethink how we can expose folks to different types of careers and opportunities. Network shape opportunity. I run an entire session that looks at, how do we do networking and how we do it like much more like efficiently. How do we not be scared of it? Because a lot of time when we ask people what is networking, they think it's being fake or going to get as many business cards as you can. We teach our students like how to do them, the right way. I know that that the big motto in Vegas is not what you know, it's who you know. But we like to take it a step further and says what you know, who you know, and then who likes you. And then from there, we know that how we teach the kids, like how they can learn to build their social capital, like right off. And that's something that we like to stress when we're building our programs. And then we want to make sure that this is that this becomes like familiarity too, like exposure becomes like things that they have been able to not just see like one time, but also to start meeting people, start knowing people, and start getting exposed to, to different types of careers. So common myths that we know that hold our students back. Myths that we've been kind of operating under, that academics alone equal workforce readiness. We know that's not the case. I can't tell you the number of times now that as I've transitioned from advising from, a long time ago with students to spending a bit of time doing that in the graduate world to now just being a mentor, and to sitting on, different folks with their committees and wanting to go into an academic space once they graduated, is that they realize that the academic space that, that if you don't have the experience, then you'll still, hit different roadblocks. You may not be marketable in a in a workspace environment without having without having experiences, especially the way that that we're changing. We talk a lot about AI. And I know a lot of folks that we run from AI, but I've always said it's not AI that's going to ever take our jobs. People who have been trained to know how to use AI more efficiently. And a lot of times, we're not getting those basic skills early on, too. I've seen experiences where I've seen, like folks from lower income areas be put out of programs because they used AI in a way to not, that would have gone against university standards. Um, and meanwhile, I've seen folks in different areas, like more wealthier schools who've been taught like differently, like, well, this is not how you use it. Let me show you like how to use it instead. And so, a lot of this too is that, we got to realize that it's just not the grades. It's really like actually teaching people like, like how to use the platforms that are going to be here, as well. Professionalism is intuitive. We know that's a myth. Professionalism must be taught. We see this now with just the way that we interact with not only with students but with folks who are put into like new situations, working in new spaces that they may have not been before too. Different cultures, in different ways in which we also carry ourselves lead to professionalism too in our output. And so we like to make sure that we stress a lot about the professionalism. And then we also have a myth that employers know how to mentor young talent, and that is to be further from the truth as well too. Mentorship is still a learned skill. It's not something that we wake up to. And I know for myself, I had an amazing boss back in from 29 to 2012, and I remember I spent the next better part of my years like chasing after that same particular like boss mentor until I finally had a conversation with him too. And he said, you may not get that, space, mentorship looks different in, with different areas. So what we like to do is we don't like to just say that like, well, here's your boss, here's your supervisor, this is also your mentee. Either we like to train our mentors or train like some of the supervisors as well too on how to be mentors, or we like to pair you with also someone that's also, that can be a mentor in that space. So instead of like the traditional ways of what, the ways that we design, what if we design college a little differently, where we focus on the education, the preparation, integration, and then the belonging? We know that early college becomes developmental versus transactional whenever we really build systems around and we start earlier with our students. That shift changes everything. So just so you all know too, when we think about this with dual enrollment, we'll use these as we talk a little bit about how we use this interchangeably. Dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment, a lot of time we use the term where they're the same thing. That's not, they serve the same purpose, but they're just, they operate differently. With dual enrollment, high school students, they enroll in a college level course and they earn college credit. Yes, they do. A lot of times this is either taught like on the college campus though, or sometimes by an online, or online by a faculty member that we have already selected that'll teach. That's like the dual enrollment. We offer that through our YRSA program that I'll talk a little bit about. The primary focus of that time a lot is like the academic acceleration. And then we also have our concurrent enrollment. This is in the state of Nevada. These courses tend to be these are a little cheaper, a little bit more reasonable. College courses are developed within like the high school. So we still develop them here, but then we embed them so that they can be taught at the high school, by a high school instructor that we have hired, based on her credentials or his credentials. And then, we increase, then they also get a chance to kind of like to follow along with us in our academic, with some of the academic advising aspects. Well, we say both do, but with the concurrent enrollment, it's very hands-on because they're usually with their high school instructor as well too. What we do something that's a little broad based called early college, where we encompass both the dual enrollment through our youth Rebel Start Academy, in which students get to take college credit early, no matter what school they're at. They can take that across the state. It allows us to be like really vertical in the state of Nevada, and then we have concurrent enrollment, which is when we teach directly at the different high schools, and we hire high school faculty to teach. What we do a little differently too is that we don't just forget about that, because we know that some of the students that we see are, they're big with, they may be at their career center more, or maybe they're involved in a particular program that is with another community organization that focuses on a unique talent or some sort. We'll work with with those populations as well too, because we know that that it's just not the school in which that students are being exposed to. So we like to make sure that we are encompassing all, and those are different ways in which how we can all work together too. Through our early college pathway, we also offer credit expiration though. And then we also give structured advising as well. We have an advisor that's on site that works with all of our students, and then we also tie all this to like some aspect of like workforce alignment, and that comes in different areas too, whether through like our apprenticeships, through internships, or through like workforce exposure. All right. Any questions so far? And please add them to the panel at any time. There's a lot to kind of cover in a short amount of time, and I got a couple of things where I want to get you all involved, but I want to make sure that you all definitely have a chance. And if there's any questions, please feel free to add those in as we go, and I'll embed those into the as we're explaining too. Okay. One question I would have for you right before we go into this as well too. I know there's a lot of people. I see there's about 46 people that are on today, which is great. So if you could, without going into total detail as to like your direct job, maybe you can just kind of let me know the industry, that you work in, whether it's healthcare, whether it's nonprofits, or whether it's community, like community service based. Yes, public school counseling, great. Education, thank you. That way I just kind of have an idea of who's in here as well too. So thank you for that. Okay, great. Nonprofit after school programming, yes. Nonprofit policy research, Nevada State University, great. Yes, Gear Up. Okay, great. Okay. Higher education, all right. Okay, yes. All right, see some friends as well too. So thank you all and that lets me know who's here as well. So great. Thank you for that. Okay. All right. So back where we are too now. What we do know too, we know that early college within a larger system does not exist in like an isolation. And I think a lot of times too, what we like to do is not create more barriers, but part of like successful programs also mean that you are building bridges, and so we can't stress the importance of building, bridges and identifying like where breaks come within the system. So if you kind of see this flow chart here, we have the student, we have education, we have workforce, and then we have our community. Within our student, we know that that's the time whenever they're developing like their identities and then their awarenesses, and then whenever we combine it with education, now we're looking at the academical and the professional preparation within that space. If everything goes well, then that hopefully translates into the workforce, where now they're having like employment, different mentorships, like different career growth, those type of opportunities, and it should be fluid. And then afterwards, like with that workforce that, we have, we're supporting the community through civic engagement. When we have like local talent and we have great workforce and we have a community which they can serve, we can recruit, like more talent to our workforce as well too. So we know this exists and we know that this is how it should be moving, like should be flowing. But what happens whenever, like there's breakdowns? This is the question that I want you all to think about, like in the spaces that you're in now. Like what happens whenever we have like a system breakdown somewhere? What happens whenever students accumulate credits without clarity or like clear direction? We can see that now. We get lots of, you can ask any of our academic advisors, any of our program coordinators, our even career services as well too. What am I going to do? Our financial aid office can, so we have this all the time too. Students sometimes if there's no direction at time, we have folks that want to get out, maybe completely change their mind on what they want to do, or still may not know. What happens, whenever we see that employers report like widening skills gaps and readiness gaps, because now whatever happens in the educational space, that we're not sometimes training for the workspace, and maybe there's not a talk that's been that's happening between the two. One of the strategies, something I was able to do in one of my courses in the past was able to, create a syllabus for one of my communication courses and work with some employers and then talk about like, well, is this here's the academic piece, but here's an outcome. Does this still make sense in today's time? And they could give some feedback, or I would maybe, maybe do a project, or if I'm doing like a research or do some type of project. We try to get folks who do this work. We try to get their input because we know what happens when we do have that breakdown. We end up with a breakdown, and we know that we end up having people who have degrees but they have degrees for fields that they're not, they're not qualified for. So then we look at, not only do we look at unemployment, but then we start looking at underemployment as well too. And then what happens here whenever the communities experience, like persistent workforce mismanagement. So now we have a community that needs a thriving workplace and a different skill set, but then we have like some type of a break in the workforce there too. Then we have like companies that don't come or that don't, or that want to leave. And we start to see that, that it becomes like an issue, and that it's not just like a singular issue. Now it becomes like more like of a systems issue. And this is where we like to, to kind of focus here so that we can address the, like where these problems exist. The cost of waiting, everyone pays. We may all pay at a different time, but everyone does pay. Students accumulate debt. They enter the workplace sometimes with lower confidence and sometimes with weaker professional identity. Employers expect workforce readiness without investing in mentorship infrastructure, and they face higher onboard costs and early turnover because there's no alignment. And then we also know that in communities we lose local talent to other regions, and then we miss compounding returns of homegrown and invested talent. We see this all the time that people leave. And in the way that we're growing now here too, with this, Vegas is going to be continuing to boom. We are going to be a sports capital. And we're gonna, and so we're gonna continue to bring in talent. So it's kind of up to us to figure out like ways in which that we can start early with preparing students, like so that they can be, like part of the talent, part of the workforce. So I'm gonna pause for a quick second, and I'm gonna ask you to maybe take like a couple seconds, and I want you to let me know like where do you most often see momentum break for students? Is it before college? Is it during college? Or is it at the workforce entry? And those momentum breaks can be based on a lot of different things. It could be like where there's there could be like a momentum shift. It could be a drop in confidence, and so I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. Oh, great. Both during workforce and yes, okay. Finances before workforce entry. Okay, sophomore semester, workforce preparedness entry before college. Yes. Um, I love that as well too. That like that it's as you can see too, just where there's so many different types of ways, like where we lose or where there's a break, we see there's not just one place, and so that kind of lets us know even more about like how we need to like be thinking. So the next part of this, and then I want to open this up for question and for conversation as well too. I would love to, to like hear from you all. And I'm fine with either or with you either talking or with you dropping in the chat. So if there's any questions right now, any comments, anything, any piece. Okay, all right. So we'll keep going, and then we'll open it up at the end. At the end. But if you have questions throughout at any point in time, please, don't hesitate to, to ask anything. All right. So this next section that I want to do, like I said, we're going to go a little, we'll be mindful of our time as well too. But we've talked a little bit about like the why. What are some of the things in place? So I kind of want to like, spend the time now looking at like what intentional design looks like. And I want to, just let you know too that, for us too, we know that we've had, like some really good partnerships, and have built like some relationships, and that has been like a key factor. And so you'll see my concept of just like relationship is kind of like keep going, like keep circling throughout this as well too, because that's just one of the things that we pride ourselves on the most, is trying to like make sure that we are, not transactional, but that we stay very relational in what we do. And so our attention to design really kind of wraps, relationship aspect, right, just or kind of permeates throughout. So for us, designing early college as a coordinated pathway. We look at this for in four pillars, where it's early exposure and timing. So for you all, if I were to ask you all too, and you can add this as well too, to your to the box too. But when do you all, think that, I guess for you all, early exposure, when does exposure start for you all when we start thinking about careers, or what do you think is a good time to expose folks to different types of opportunities that that exist out there? Love it. Yes. Middle school, elementary school. Yes. Elementary, even even pre-K. Yes. Yes, grade 6 through 8. Yes, so yes, we fully agree with this as well too. Traditionally, one of the problems that we've had, in general with education or with dual enrollment programs is that traditionally, we used to wait until the junior senior year, and I don't know by show of hands if of how many of you had taken dual enrollment classes, as whenever you were in high school. I did not have that fortunate opportunity to do so. I didn't even know they even existed really until probably until I actually moved to Vegas in 2006. Starting my master's program. I didn't know that people had that opportunity. Of course, we had AP classes and everything, but never knew about all this opportunity. And I think now, though, as we have moved and we've shifted, whenever I first started learning about them, I learned more about how it is still ended up being for more, your high achieving students, and so and those are the ones who are taking a lot of your dual enrollment courses. What we've been able to do, what we propose really heavy, is that we do start early. We don't just focus on one, on one genre of student. We know if we can get some early exposure, so we believe in the early exposure of creating these pathways. How that we like to have the rigor within this too. And then we like to embed relationships, and then we like to combine this workforce integration where it becomes aligned versus just access. And so this is kind of how we like to do with this, build this relational infrastructure where we are embedding, where we're making this circular. But as you notice, this relationship infrastructure is on the outside, because we know this is what binds it all together too. We can't early exposure without having a relationship with who we're working with. Does not mean that it doesn't hit the way that it could hit. It's not as impactful. The same thing with the workforce integration as well too. So we like to have this relationship piece here, where we show that it's not just a step, but in the sequence, but it becomes more like the full environment. Everything has everything we want to is to spin off of our relationships. We'll look at early exposure. What we mean by that is expanding what students see. So discover career pathways early. Connect classroom to the real world. And experience college as early as middle school. Some of the middle school students that we've been able to work with have been some of our best students. They have, we had back in this past year, the last 3 years, actually, we've been working with Cram Middle School. And those students have been, I think the average GPA over there has been a 3.9. And they've been taking a leadership course every year. And the way that it's set up, the instructor, brings principals in from all over the different, from all over the region, and different school leaders to talk to them about just leadership tactics. And and it's been a great opportunity, for those students. So we know kind of connecting classroom to real world to see what this isn't, that education is more than just more than just being, more than just the teaching field. There's lots of different areas on how everybody could go into different realms. Credit bearing rigor and preparation with purpose. And so afterwards too, as we know that with good rigor in the course, we still make sure that we are looking at that we're providing a good realm of academic discipline, as well as good study habits, time management, and then growing their confidence through demonstrated competence. One of the things that we know too is that competence builds readiness. And so if a student does well in the course, they really have more of the I belong here aspect. A lot of our students sometimes do feel that, am I smart enough for this? And we know they feel like this because we sometimes think that as well too, with just our own interactions. And we're showing them as well too, I belong this and I can do this. And so we like to make sure that we prepare with a purpose. And that's what we think that the courses should be built when we have these programs. Workforce integration, putting the application into like context. And this can come through like a lot of different ways. The ways that we are able to do it is through apprenticeships and through, through some of our paid placements opportunities, and some of the some of the internships that we provided, some site-based learning opportunities. But you don't have to have all of these right off in order like to provide like a workforce space or an opportunity for students. We know that everybody that we work with may not have money to pay their students right off. But if we can gain like a good experience out of it too as an internship, that's great, and that's something that we would promote also. And maybe sometimes it's not always getting them over there right off, but maybe it could be bringing industry folks, like to them. Utilizing our own social capital. There's more and more people that we realize every day that really want to work with schools, that want to work with young people in some aspect. They've just been waiting on the opportunity to be asked. And if you ask them to come in for a session, then more than likely you'll get more than enough people, who can also come in and come talk about, like how what they're learning like relates to the, like to the workplace. So, yeah, students don't just imagine careers, they can experience them, and then that completely changes everything. In our relationship structure, the environment that sustains it all, we look at this from like that. We know that mentor students persist from term to term at significantly higher rates. So what we like to do with the relationship infrastructure is provide advising and mentoring. We have someone who works with all of our students, and she's available to work in the space. My good colleague, Dr. Butler, who I see on here as well too. She works really heavily in this relationship space too, and we start looking at building like these employee partnerships. We encourage you all to do that as well, is to build out these partnerships and to utilize, like what's in your, like to think about ways in which, what's in your industry or what industry you're in too, and how and what collaboration, can look like. One of the things too that we do is we embed our instructors from the community, with some of our courses. And that has been an amazing opportunity for students to see people within their, within their space, or with the, folks who kind of grew up in, or that someone who they can relate to. And we like to build these belonging structures, so that people have the opportunity to connect with, with one another. And so we pilot, one of our biggest things is to embed this to every step of the process. So what this looks like with us, through UNLV College Office of Youth and College Career Readiness, we have been able to operationalize across Nevada. What started out as horizontally, just Clark County, but now we've done this, be able to work vertically. We serve rising 8th graders all the way through high school students. We've had some 7th graders I mentioned as well too. We are across 20. We're in 25 Nevada schools currently, with that number continuing to grow every day. And that's in a different place where some of them are, some of them are taking classes with us through our asynchronous model, where they're, where it's a self-paced course, and some of them are taking them through us where we're on their campus every day. And many of these schools are from Title I schools. They're from some of our under-resourced communities. And that's, and so if they're at a school there, we have a lot of schools with high, with high needs. And so those are some of the ones that we want to make sure that we target to offer them opportunities. But we don't just, that's not just our main focus. We work with any and every school. And a lot of our students are first generation students, and a lot of our students are they're second generation students. Yes. So we serve pretty much, when I wrap it up, we try to serve everybody. Anyone that wants to go to college, and gain credit early. So our commitment is every student we serve deserves the opportunity to experience college and career success. And we don't mean eventually, we mean right now. So another fact too, so over the time that we've been doing this, we've supported more than 1,000 students, across over the past 3 years through our different programs. Last year alone, we helped, or we serviced over 584 students. And the beauty of us too is that, with this, is that we built the program so that, that we can have it where students can earn up to 39 transferable credits at no out-of-pocket cost to the students. So yes, so right now we are still paying for the students, and that comes through grants, relationships, and through a lot of partnerships that we try to service. One of the things that we do that we really love is that, working with folks that may have their own types of resources. And they're like, I got some students, and I'm looking for some ways to grow with them in a workforce space. I'm kind of get some ideas around, we can come help you brainstorm some ideas. And then from there too, build out a program if it works, like that where we can actually kind of like figure out like how we can collaborate. And then we could be like your provider for for your education course. We do that for a couple of different groups also too. And so that's been really great with us. We've been able to collaborate with Gear Up for the last this would be our fourth year working with UNLV Gear Up. It has been great. We've been able to work with Nevada partners this way, and it's been a great opportunity there. We work with NFBLME, which is the National Fellowship for Black and Latino Male Educators, and work with that space. Homegrown is another one as well too that we work really closely with. So we've been able to work with a lot of folks and through partnerships, which has allowed us to continue to grow access and to give students who normally would not have access to opportunities. They're now able to have access. And we look at how we look at our outcomes and where they've been. And so the data reflects just what our intentional design has done. So this past year long too, during our fall term, we ended up with an average GPA of a 3.24 over the span of the year. Students are meeting and exceeding the college level expectations. And from there too, that we have a lot of our the majority of our students, we had a really high ratings, that 4.5 rating of folks who thoroughly enjoyed their opportunity here, with us during our summertime programs that we run. So we've been it's been a good space. A lot of our students made comments about how this is one of the first times that they felt like they were, that they were asked to critically think in a space that did not feel, as intimidating as well too. And so we like to be able to take that to that high school space and be able to push that. And so we were excited. And yeah, that doesn't mean everybody did well in that space, but completion rates were still good with the 95% completion rate during the fall term, 90 during the spring, and then 93 during the summer. And so we like to highlight that. And we looked at that the students not only took the class, but they also persisted in it, and they succeeded in the course as well. And then with our workforce and career impact, we looked at workforce not just being an add-on, but we wanted to really kind of talk about this throughout. And so some of the key partners that we worked with, that we also work with, is the Boys and Girls Club of Southern Nevada, UNLV IT, Nevada Partners, the Southern Nevada Health District, and then a lot of other community-based organizations across the region. When we asked our students earlier, we found out that 68% of our participants, they expressed that they had interest in some aspect of an education career. So that, was a wild shock. And so we like to show them that there's a lot of different spaces too. And so what we like to frame it is that it doesn't just have to be in the classroom. What does education look like? And so then we looked at some of our students too. And we had 22 students last summer that worked in an internship, and 6 specifically that worked with the Boys and Girls Club. And of those 6, 3 continued on to work. They got hired out of their apprenticeship while they were still in high school. And so now they have a job where they're still, where they're working. And they got this through an apprenticeship. And so that's a huge, space that we can happen. And then, one way too, when we look back at our teaching pathways, what has been traditionally, a field that's been dominated by women, we've seen a lot of male representation within our teaching pathways, but it's not by chance. It's actually pretty intentional too. With some of the organizations that we collaborate with, they do really heavy with working with, recruiting male teachers. With NFBLME, which is I just mentioned the National Fellowship for Black and Latino Male Educator. Through their EduPath Works program, they really focus on working with Black and brown men who want to be into the classroom at an early age. And so we've been working with them too. And so it's also working with the different organizations that can, which has allowed us to also work with, increasing our male representation in the teaching space. Okay, so before I go on to that too, any questions? I definitely have our wins and our losses, our strengths, what works well, and what do we want to do to continue navigating? Any questions? Okay, yes, great question. You noted reaching 25 schools across the state. Of those schools, what's your presence in northern and rural Nevada? So right now, currently, we have students in 3 different schools that are in northern Nevada. But we just met with we met with Eureka, County today. We're in, my colleagues and I are going to go like on a spin around too. What we want to do is to open up more of our reach in Northern Nevada. We've been able to meet with some folks, and Michael, at the end of this too, you'll see my contact information. I'd love to chat with you on how we could, open up more presence within those schools. But right now we are working, we have 3 solidified with more to come, just based on meeting with particular schools. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So our strengths and our realities, and here's what we know, what works well for us. So things that are working right now is that early exposure builds belief before barriers form with us. And so we know that the early exposure has been working with us. We know that our apprenticeships have been working as we continue to build. We know that our relational support increases persistence, and we know that has been something that we've been working with. And our flexible model has been working, well. Our schools in Northern Nevada, that we've been able to work with, have been has been great because we can, we can use our asynchronous model, and now we have, now there's schools that have enough presence as well too with some of their students that we can actually go and we can train, and we can run something exactly like at the school. Those are things that we know that work. But with everything too, we also know that we run into like sometimes barriers. Like credits, there's still a credit limit per semester that students are, they have to hit. So sometimes we do have to go to the petitions office, or we have to maybe like petition the student to get more credit. And so, but to be honest with you, and I'll be, just about me, I didn't really, I didn't want to work with this to just get students in college and out as fast as possible. That's not, in my opinion, like why we do the work. In my opinion, we do the work is that so we can allow students to to expose them to careers and to give them the type of college experience that college was actually meant for. The one where you don't have to feel as though that you're rushing through school, and the one in which that you can explore ideas and opportunities, take internships, study abroad, things that a lot of times our students don't get to do because they're doing 15 credits, 18 credits, or they're starting at a deficit. Dual enrollment allows us to kind of like see those deficits, early on. It's no secret here that although yes, our graduation rate in Clark County has gone up from 81% to 86%, which is great. We also know that our Nevada reading or our Nevada math rate is only 18% of students are on par right now or on course. That would be considered like grade low math. And so that is like an alarming fact. And so, but by looking at dual enrollment early too, those are things that we can kind of tell early. We may say, oh, great, well, if you want to go into a career like this, here's some things that you may need to know. Like your math level, we got to get your math here as well too. And so we make those are like things we can put in place, like early. So with that too, we know that it's more so than just like getting kids out early. It's about preparing them, giving them college exposure. And so that's one of the reasons like we like to expose. But we also know transportation can be a barrier, and that may limit some of the participation in some of our under-resourced communities. So some things that we suggest is to figure out how you can bring things to them. We actually prefer sometimes to work at the school or at somewhere that can serve as that school because it's it could be cheaper tuition that way or cheaper cost in general. Currently now our credits, and when we do like our concurrent model, you can do this for $100 a course, and so that's a steal. But if we do the asynchronous model, it's still a steal because it's less than traditional college 3-credit course, but it's about $600. And so you see there's a difference between like the two. But yeah, regardless though, we like to provide students with different modality options, and when there's transportation barriers, that's how we do so. We can work at we can work with the libraries, we can work at community centers that are close to you, and build courses that's a central area that all the students can get to. Funding complexity across partners, districts, and institutions. We love the program, but it takes money. And so we've been doing well right now, being able to fund everybody. We don't know how long that we'll be able to do so, but at the time being, we love the fact that we can do this. But it also takes, like works from some of our partners. Some of our, we were constantly looking to apply to write grants. We like to collaborate as well too. Like my colleague, Dr. Butler also, not only does she work with our apprenticeships, but she also works with people, that are looking to collaborate on grants and opportunities. So that's something that we do. So we're always looking for ways in which that we can collaborate, or that we can go after funding together, or provide some services, as well. But that's one too. And then lastly, like the capacity to grow as demand outpaces current staffing and infrastructure. Now, we grew this. We started slow. Now we're almost bursting at the seams already, and so we know that we're going to continue to grow. And so, but while we continue to grow, the thing that we want to make sure we do is we grow at scale. We won't want to just fall into a program that's just awarding credits, and where students are gaining something from us at the same time, and they're not gaining like this workforce skill and all the good preparation. We want to make sure that they're also gaining, that we aren't just growing just to be a check mark for anybody. We want it to still be very intentional in our process. So, and we've learned to be adaptable. What we built 3 years ago looks different than what we built 2 years ago, and what we were doing this time different. There's always modifications. We love we know we have to be adaptable. There is no one school that has, a perfect setup. So we know that we just have to be working with all of our schools too, and be adaptable, in how that we work. Okay. So what I would like to give you an invitation. This invitation is for you to engage, with us as well too. The things that we do too, that we know, is that we work through, relationships. And there's a meaningful role that everybody plays at the table, whether it is something larger, whether it's something small. So with us too, we look at schools, we look at community partners, we look at employers, parents, anybody of the sort too. And for some of the schools in which that we look for to figure out how can we identify and nominate students for early college pathways. So we like to work with schools in general. We like to partner on course delivery. We like to support faculty co-participation and co-instruction. We're always hiring faculty members, that have master's degrees in education that are looking to teach. We're always hiring them, at our high schools. So if you have a school and you're looking to collaborate, we love to talk with you. For employers, if you're looking to host apprentices in real professional environments. If you say, I'd love to, but we're not too sure about funding right now, sounds good. Let's talk anyway. If you're willing to provide mentorship or some of the career coaching, that's great. If you're an employer and you're like, this is great. I work in trade industries, and, there's a lot of things that folks can still learn about us and how we reflect and how we delve into this academic space too. We'd love to talk to you as well too. We love to co-design workforce experiences also. And then for our community partners, we love to collaborate on grant funding to explore geographical access as well too, to work with underserved communities, like to collaborate on some of the education initiatives that you have. Lots of different ways. There's so many different ways in which that you can get involved, with us. So many different ways in which that you can start things on yourself. But regardless, we love to be a partner, with you, on that journey. Okay. So if we were ending it out, I would love to open this up for questions. The three things that I would love for us to just take with us too, as we round this out, is that if we want better outcomes at 22, we got to design, earlier exposure at 16, maybe even 12. If we want confident students, we got to build agency earlier. And if we want coordinated systems, we got to align our relationships, our rigor, and our real world experiences, by design. Early college is about identity, it's about readiness, and it's about opportunities. And so we want you to, that's the big piece that we want to make sure that, that we take away from with this too, is that, we can look at all the different types of aspects of early college. discuss strategies on like further how to build. I hope that you have been able to walk away with some additional strategies and some ways in which that you can kind of collaborate, and partner with us. If you are thinking about, if there was a highlight, it was like, well, hey, I loved it, but I want to learn more about like how I can, collaborate with you. Then please email me down here. I don't know why my Gmail is here. I think that's by accident. I'll put here in the box my work one, so you can make sure it goes to me. Yep. But you can always shoot me a text message. You can or talk to me via LinkedIn, as well too. But yes, but I love to chat, and I love to open this up for like the next few minutes as well too, to answer, any questions or any questions, comments, from the audience, from any of our attendees. And you can do either or. You can raise your hand, or you can type in the box. No questions. All right, I'm gonna let you kind of ponder this a little bit. Okay, all right, there's one. Okay. Okay, yes. I see there is a hand up, and okay, Tom Davis, yes. Sure, Tom.
Please unmute your microphone and then you can speak.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I was looking at it and I was thinking back even in elementary school where students, we just put a lot on them even at K through 3. So sometimes students even get slowed down to where they become frustrated. So by the time they even get to middle school, some of them feel like they're already, wow, I can't do this. And so they don't even see that going to college way down the road and maybe just surviving high school. So how do we strengthen those skills in K through 5, I guess here in Nevada, strengthen them without overwhelming? Because I saw the statement, you to get better outcomes at 22, you really have to lay that groundwork so much earlier. And then, so how do you kind of tie those things together? And I see that, your presentation has been mainly on, those middle school, high schoolers, trying to get them to college. But what do we do with those young ones? And I took 2 young men to a fire station recently, one that I was mentoring, just to let them see what the fire department is really about. So how do we strengthen those things lower level so that they see more, and then maybe just slow them down a little bit to let them digest what it is we're trying to teach them?
Well, yeah, thank you for that, Tom. Great question. Thank you, Jessica, also as well too. Great comment on having guest speakers. Career Day Fund seems to work with the younger ones. Yeah, and I totally agree. I don't think you have to spend as much time, focusing totally like um, on going to college more than just like exposure, like more than anything, and getting kids to like to see that there's different types, that there's different possibilities, different careers that are out here as well. I think the more that the kids know, when you're taking them to different places as well, like in anything from, hey, if you take them to the fire department and just letting them know too that like, that yes, this is the fireman, but also this person here does, this person here is the dispatcher. And so they do this person here, they check out, they check out folks to make sure that their homes are safe. Here's the social work over here. Here's this. And so there's things I think that we do where we don't have to put so much emphasis on going to college, especially whenever there's people that it's so far away. But I think the bigger thing is exposure. And I think you get that exposure through leaning on your social capital also as well too, bringing folks in as well, besides just, like the teachers every day, but bringing in guest speakers. I don't think we always have to wait until career week to do so. I think if we start exposing people to time outside of career week, it becomes like a great opportunity for us to do so. Thank you for that. Okay, thanks. Todd Butterworth said, is this process intended primarily for college-bound students? What about those who have no intention of attending college? Thank you, Todd, because I know that's a great question to ask as well too, and that's something that we have spoken about too. And that's a great option for like with our Rebel Start summer camp. So one of the things that we do during the summer time also too is that we want every kid to go to college, but the reality of it too is that the same way that whenever we were younger or whenever I was younger, I had aspirations to playing ball, going to North Carolina, and playing with Dean Smith, but I only got to be 7. We only got to be 6 foot. And 6 foot really isn't tall to like to play basketball, like professionally in that space. So of course we had to think about what else to do. Now it's not any different now, except for people instead of them wanting to be, like rappers, they want to be influencers, or instead of them want to be movie stars, they want to have their own types of stations. The difference though is that, like how we used to say, like there's a 1 in a million chance these kids have like, I think more of a chance to do so and be exposed with like differently. And so I think that's a reality when we start thinking about those ones who have not thought about going to college or that want to go into something that's more trade oriented or that want to go into that. And so what we tell people to do too is to still come to like one of the summer camps, because the things that whether you want to be a teacher or whether you want to be an electrician, you still need to have like people skills. And so our courses, the courses that we have early on still work with expanding out, that works on those, like that human relationship piece, that diversity piece, in that aspect. So some of these are built for that. And then also when we start looking at, we're offering different areas, like with micro credentials, those can also be offered for students who don't really plan on going to college like right off. But I'd love to talk more about that. All right, Liliana, so can you speak to the parental engagement piece? Are there parent meetings? Yes, parents follow up. So yes, we do, and we have not done as an amazing job as we have wanted to with all the parental piece. But we do early on, when the students are first starting. Whenever we work with our Gear Up students, they do an amazing job of talking to their kids, like they're having the parent night to come out to, and we usually are able to go out and talk more about the space with the students. And what the class will look like. But one of the things that we also like to also do is to offer them opportunities like for training and for development themselves too. When the students aren't being successful, we do have some things in place. Usually, if they're like, we try to get everybody now, because we still a university, so still work with the FERPA form, is that we get students early on now through a lot of our programs to try to get them to complete like a FERPA form, so that we can also talk to the parents about their work. But that's something that we kind of want to work more with too. But we try to do like a lot of follow up, and then we work with our advisor, who is usually following up with students every couple of weeks, even kind of monitoring like where their grades are as they're working, and kind of provide that academic advising piece throughout, while they're in the program. Love to follow up with you as well too if you have more questions about that. Sorry, like when do we start? When do we offer like early exposure? Like I said, I think it just depends on everyone too. But I don't think there's ever a time that you can not expose too early, even if it's not like the direct go to school to major in this, but just giving students the opportunity to see different careers through a variety of ways, bringing people in, getting field trips, things that are free. That we can take students to, I think, is early. But when we work with our dual enrollment, we work, that 8th grade, is where we start liking to expose students. Okay. In your expertise, what are some of the challenges English language learners face, and what are some of the supports available to them, as well too? Sorry, okay, I got this here. Well, yeah. So I think our English, they are. There's a challenge, that we face with our English language learners, and I will say too that we. A lot of the courses that we're building now too, they do need to when they are in our online form too. They do have to be in compliance with any type of accommodation, and that also includes, you know, like some of the transcription. But we haven't done to like something that's really more targeted right now at the English language learners as well, and not for like out of like not wanting to, but just kind of like out of the scope of out of the focus of what we actually have the capacity to do within the office. We have not been able like to do something like particularly within that space. You know, like we do try to put them, you know, like pair them if they're like in particular courses that we know they're taking classes. If they're the core courses that are happening at one time, we try to put them with someone that would there be like less of a language barrier. But we don't have anything that's has been like set out like right off like right now. But something for us to continue to like to think about. All right, last one, and I know we got to get off. Can you tell us how you were working with instructors on their certain qualification, professional development? Yes. With the instructors, there's a couple different type of ways. We do have some folks who, if you're at a school and your school wants to like to build out a dual enrollment program at the school, and you have some teachers who have master's degrees and you want to see if they're qualified to teach one of our courses, then yes, you just reach out to us. We get them hired, especially if they're going to teach at your campus. You know, we'll definitely do that. If there's somebody else within the area, like that, you know, that maybe we're doing something that's asynchronous and there's somebody we built a relationship with and they also have credentials, have a master's degree, then we can also work with them as well too. But and that's the first thing we look at is, do they have like the qualifications based on, and that's just for our program. Other programs, they may have to be like really specific, or really curriculum based too, or the degree has to maybe match up perfectly. Ours does not have to match up like perfectly, you know, just like that. But yeah, when they get to professional development as well too, we invite them to all of our professional development talks, our workshops, our summit, any opportunity that we have here at the college that we would offer to our normal faculty. And then two, they also meet with me and my team once a month. And then we talk about like just what we're seeing in the school, what are some of the wins, what are some of the challenges. We create community like kind of like around that in that space. We've had some great folks who start working with us part-time and then have now moved on into being like all part of our main faculty team here as well too. So just reach out to me and I'd love to talk about like how we could work with with instructors and how we can like support you, whether you're at your school or whether you're at your whether at your high school center. I'd love to talk to you more. Okay, everyone, my time's up. I appreciate you all. Thanks for staying on, a couple minutes behind. For those who, my email address is right here in the box again, scbern.coleman@gmail.com. I'm sorry, at UNLV.edu. I'm reading. All right. So yes, would love to hear from you. And yes, shoot me a message. Like I said, Dr. Butler, her information is in here as well too. So yes, shameless plug too. We have our PhD program in workforce development, organizational leadership that'll be rolling out for the fall semester. If any of you are looking and thinking about like taking this work up and looking at like how we support like the growing workforce as we continue to grow, reach out to me as well too. Love to have you. Love to talk more about that too.